Hi, I'm Coach Hallis, and welcome to episode 24 of the Keeping It Real vlog. This is quarter three, week four. So, 4-day week. It's the end of the interims. So, this is, I guess, halfway through the first quarter of the second semester. Basically, we're at the end of the first 4 weeks. This week was another really good week of work. Different groups are at different points in their project, but they're relatively close to each other. They're kind of working on different parts at the same time, but they are. I was kind of hoping we would have wrapped up our prototypes, but they're really taking their time with them, and that's okay. Some groups are were able to get done. One was completely done with their prototype, and the others, some are close. Some got a little bit farther into getting their full pieces outlined and cut. One group has their prototype done. Their pieces were outlined and properly cut on all parts. So all of their actual pieces for the full one are done, and their prototype is done. They've reflected. They know what they're going to do differently. So they're the farthest ahead. And as you can imagine, that happens to be the group that has the most consistently attending students. So they're able to get the most done. And that's fine. They'll then spend a little bit more time working on their written component while some other people catch up on the more physical components, and those students can help others. So we by next week we should have all the prototypes done that I can show you. I found a place in the school where I'm allowed to display them. So basically a display case I'm going to be using to showcase the prototypes that the students are working, essentially the completion of their mini project. That can also kind of spread the news about what the kids are doing. So they're getting some of their prototype work curated, and I'm going to use that as well to showcase how outlines and initial drafts and building on those drafts of a woodworking project like building a doghouse also mirror the outlining in multiple drafts process of writing. So hopefully that'll make some things click for students and for teachers and other community members who see that displayed. So working on initial curation, and I'll show all that next week when we have it done. There were two things I want to talk about this week. One is funding, because I've kind of glossed over that in terms of this project, where we're building 6 dog houses. 5 groups of about 3 kids each are building these dog houses for the animal shelter to distribute to members of the community in need. Great, but materials aren't free. So how do we do that? Fortunately, we have a makerspace here that I happen to run, and that has most of the tools that we need. Between myself and what's at the makerspace, we have no problems as far as tools go. If we didn't have that, we could have reached out to community partners, tried to borrow them, worked with a local carpenter or woodworker, or find some way, a local makerspace, or whatever sort of things it is. A lot of the work that we're doing, we're using a very expensive SawStop table saw, which we purchased last year with the help of an INFI Maker Awards grant. And we happen to be funding this project with leftover a few $100s from that grant. So the materials for this project came out to around $600. Some other things were donated, or like the paint I was getting on my own because I just kind of looked for when I could get cheap paint, which I talked about in a previous vlog. But with lumber prices being what they are right now, that was the most expensive part, was getting 6 sheets of plywood. By the way, that's 5 groups that are working on them, and then I'm building one like in front of them, one step ahead. So it's the same thing as I've done for my model. I modeled a prototype so that they can see each step. I'm showing on mine and then letting them do it on theirs, under my supervision, of course. The more dangerous the tools are, the more closely I'm supervising. And so I'm one step along. So at the end, we're going to have 6 dog houses that we can give to this to the community shelter. So in our case, we had some leftover funds that were able to support that. We just had to do the paperwork. So I had the students, I gave them a spreadsheet, the materials that we would need based off of plans, showed them how they can find plans for all kinds of different things. But here's a plan that I'm giving you. This is the first time most of you are using power tools. So we're not going to design these things from scratch. We're going to first get our introduction to woodworking by following some plans and learning how to do that. Based on that, here are the materials we're going to need. Now go do the research, go check out Lowe's website, and that's where we happen to have an account. So in order to process that most easily through the grant, that's the website we use. That's the store we went through. Students found out how much each thing is going to cost, tallied it up. We were able to put that on a PO and use the grant to purchase it. However, if you don't happen to have a few $100s left over from a maker grant, then there are other ways you can go about that as well. Students can write requests for donations. If you have more time for your project, if this is like a year-long sort of thing that you're doing, this might be the gaining funds, might be a whole separate project. You might do a completely different thing to raise funds for your project, and then later on in the year or late in the semester, you then use those funds towards it. There's all kinds of opportunities for business, finance, math, marketing, all sorts of high school classes I can think of where you could create a fundraiser if that was your thing. Students can seek donations both from within and with outside of the school for these sorts of things. So just don't let the fact that something requires money stop you. Exhaust every possible option. Talk to your coworkers, talk to your administrators, talk to community partners. If you have this project in mind that, man, it would be really cool if we could do this, and here's how I'm going to tie in my subjects, and here's why the kids would be into it, and here's how it would help the community, then just talk to people and keep working at it until you find ideas. And even if it takes you a year, do that awesome project the following year. So that's what I would recommend. Don't let funding get in the way. I don't really like dealing with money, but I would hate to see kids miss an opportunity just because, I had everything else in mind and it would have been a really cool project, but it would have cost money, so we couldn't do it. Administrators and community partners and other people in the school might have all kinds of ideas to help get you there. So that's that for the funding piece. Help kids get involved, or let kids get involved with figuring out how much money you're going to need. And then you can, of course, also have them help come up with ways that they can raise that money. The other thing is when you're managing a project like this, you have to consider bottlenecks. And one way of doing that is with stations, where even though you might be one teacher or you and a co-teacher might be the only ones, finding the areas that require your supervision the most and then being in those places. And that might mean that you have a couple of bottlenecks going on where, for example, the table saw. It's a dangerous tool, even though we have the safest version of it in the world. I need to oversee that. I need to be there when a kid is operating the table saw. I need to make sure that they are positioning themselves correctly, that all the appropriate safety procedures are being followed. I can't monitor them at the table saw and the miter saw at the same time. But I can be at the table saw with one group while another group is drilling pocket holes. In our case, I supported one student directly until she got the hang of it. She got really good at that. She was proud of herself for being able to do that. And then I had her stay there while other groups brought over their boards that needed to have pocket holes drilled. I did the same thing with another student who happened to be really good at then joining those together. This is for the base of their doghouse. So I've got one student, okay, I know you're in this group, but I'm going to have you hang out at this station for a while. When each group comes up, help them drill their pocket holes. Once everybody has that done, go back to your group. Another guy is there helping them attach those things together. When one group comes over to you, help them out, show them how to do that, and then I'll be over here at the table saw. Once I'm done with the table saw, I'll head over to the miter saw. And when I'm helping with kids at the miter saw, some people are going to be painting and some people are going to be working on their prototypes. So you want to have an idea of, before you go into the class, how can I position myself and what can students be doing so that everybody has something productive to be working on, while the most important things to be supervised are supervised. And stations are one way of doing that, because there are things that are going to be bottlenecked, where, meaning if every kid is in the room is just waiting to use the table saw, then you're going to have a lot of dead time for students. You don't want that. So with having some kids finishing their prototypes while others moved on to outlining the patterns on the full-size sheets, And will some kids painting and drawing on their prototype pieces while others are cutting those pieces up. And then we have some kids that are still going to be just working on the writing component while we do the physical component. That allows for those things to happen. So that's our update. That's where we are. Think about funding and think about how you can have stations set up so that you can appropriately supervise without your students having a lot of dead time. And we'll see you next week when I can show you those prototypes in episode 25.